The billionaire was supposed to be infertile. That's what the doctors said. That's what the contract promised. So when Naya saw her baby's paternity results, she knew someone was lying. She just didn't know it was everyone. Happy holidays, my beautiful, amazing Pride family. Welcome back to Proudly Black Stories. You all have been so supportive, and I promise to always try my best to give you the best stories as I learn and improve every day. If this is your first time coming across my video, do comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe to officially join the Pride family. Now, let's get into today's story. Nia Carter knew she was being followed 3 blocks before she reached the building. The black SUV had been trailing her since she left the subway, moving too slowly, too deliberately through Manhattan traffic. When she stopped at the corner of 5th Avenue, it stopped too. When she turned toward the address on the mysterious letter she'd received that morning, the SUV pulled ahead and double-parked, as if it had been expecting her destination all along. The letter had been simple. Cream cardstock, expensive weight, her name in embossed lettering. Inside, just an address, a time, and a single line. You've been selected, 23rd floor, come alone. No signature. No explanation. Nia had almost thrown it away, except for one detail that made her hands shake when she noticed it. The envelope had been slipped under her apartment door sometime after 2 in the morning because she'd checked her mail before bed and it wasn't there, but her building had a broken buzzer system. You needed a key to get into the lobby. Someone had been inside her building, on her floor, outside her door while she slept. That should have terrified her enough to stay away. But Naya had $67 in her bank account, an eviction notice giving her 4 days to come up with 3 months' back rent, and a student loan payment she'd already deferred twice. Terror was a luxury for people who had options. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place where the doorman wore better shoes than anything Nia owned. He opened the door before she could reach for it, smiled like he'd been expecting her, and said, "Miss Carter, 23rd floor. Mr. Calder is waiting." The elevator was the size of her studio apartment. Naya watched her reflection multiply in the mirrored walls as she rose 23 floors up, her thrift store blazer and scuffed boots looking more pathetic with each passing floor. Her dark curls were frizzing in the humidity. She'd tried to look professional, put together, like someone who received mysterious invitations from glass towers. Instead, she looked exactly like what she was. A 23-year-old art school graduate with a worthless degree and dwindling options, pretending she belonged in a world that had never wanted her. The elevator opened directly into an office that was more window than wall. Manhattan sprawled below, glittering and indifferent. The room was coldly minimal, all sharp edges and expensive emptiness. And behind a desk that probably cost more than a year of Nia's rent sat a man who looked like he'd been carved from the same unforgiving material as his building. Roman Calder was younger than she'd expected and older than seemed fair. Late 40s maybe, with black hair silvering at the temples and features that were almost too severe to be handsome, except they absolutely were. He wore a black suit that fit like it had been constructed around his body. His eyes, when they lifted to meet hers, were the color of smoke and just as impossible to read. "Miss Carter," he said, and his voice matched everything else about him. Cool, precise, expensive. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Nia sat in the chair across from his desk, feeling like she was being interviewed for a position she hadn't applied for, which, she supposed, was exactly what was happening. Roman studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle, not sexual exactly, though there was something unsettling in the way his gaze moved over her face, her hands, the nervous way she gripped the strap of her bag. It was more like he was cataloguing her, memorizing details, comparing her to some internal image he'd already formed. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "No," Nia admitted. "Should I?" Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or satisfaction. "Most people do. I prefer that you don't. It makes this simpler." He slid a folder across the desk. Nia opened it and immediately wished she hadn't. Inside were photographs of her, dozens of them, leaving her apartment, at the coffee shop where she worked 3 mornings a week, painting a mural in Brooklyn, at the clinic where she volunteered on Thursdays. The photos went back months, maybe longer. Someone had been documenting her life in careful detail, and she'd never noticed. "What is this?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Due diligence," Roman said simply. "I'm offering you a job, Miss Carter. I needed to ensure you were suitable." Nia closed the folder, her heart hammering. "You've been stalking me. I've been researching you. There's a difference." He didn't sound defensive or apologetic. He stated it like a fact, the way someone might mention checking references. "You're healthy. No genetic predispositions to major illnesses. No history of addiction or mental instability. You're resilient, resourceful, and according to every psychological marker we've analyzed, you have a high tolerance for stress and isolation." He paused. "You're also desperate, which makes you perfect." The casual cruelty of it stole her breath. Perfect for what? Roman opened a drawer and withdrew a second folder, this one much thicker. He placed it in front of her with the care of someone presenting a sacred text. "I'm going to give you $900 million, Miss Carter. In exchange, you're going to give me a child." The words didn't make sense at first. Nia stared at him, waiting for the punchline, the hidden camera, some indication that this was an elaborate joke. Roman's expression didn't change. "I don't understand," she said finally. "It's quite simple. I want an heir. I'm unable to have biological children due to a medical condition. I've selected you to be a gestational surrogate. The embryo will be created via in vitro fertilization using donor egg and donor sperm. You'll carry the pregnancy to term, sign away all parental rights at birth, and walk away with enough money to never worry about eviction notices again." He said it like he was describing a business merger, clinical, transactional, completely insane. "Why me?" Nia asked. "There are agencies for this kind of thing. Professional surrogates. Professional surrogates have families, support systems, people who would ask questions about the terms of the arrangement." Roman leaned forward slightly. "You have no one, Miss Carter. Your parents are dead. You aged out of foster care at 18 with no siblings, no extended family. Your few friends are scattered, your relationships shallow by necessity. You're intelligent and capable, but the world has given you nothing. That makes you valuable to me." Every word was true, and every word was a knife. Nia had spent her whole life trying to pretend her isolation was a choice, independence instead of abandonment. Having it laid out so bluntly, reduced to a qualifying asset for a billionaire's transaction, made her feel like she was disappearing. "The compensation is $900 million, Roman continued. "Paid in full upon successful birth and completion of all legal documentation. In addition, all medical expenses, living expenses, and incidentals will be covered throughout the pregnancy. You'll want for nothing. Except my freedom," Nia said quietly. Roman's smile was the barest curve of his mouth. "Freedom is overrated when you're starving. But you're not wrong. There are conditions." He opened the contract. "You'll live in my penthouse for the duration of the pregnancy. No exceptions. I'll control your diet, your schedule, your activities. You'll have the best medical care available, but you'll also be monitored constantly. Think of it as a very well-compensated quarantine." "You mean a prison?" "I mean an incubator. You're carrying something infinitely precious to me, Miss Carter. I don't take chances with my investments." He turned the contract toward her. "You have 24 hours to decide. Sign, and your life changes tomorrow. Walk away, and you'll never hear from me again. Though I suspect 4 days from now, when you're evicted, you'll wish you'd chosen differently." Nia looked down at the contract. The numbers swam on the page. $900 million. More money than she could conceptualize. Enough to never be afraid again. Enough to paint whatever she wanted, live wherever she chose, become the artist she'd always dreamed of being. All she had to do was sell her body for 9 months, become a vessel for a stranger's child, live in a cage made of glass and money, owned by a man who looked at her like she was a problem he'd solved. "Why do you want a child this way?" she asked. "You're obviously wealthy. You could adopt. You could find someone willing to do this who actually wants children." For the first time, something human crossed Roman's face. It was brief, gone almost before she registered it, but it looked like pain. "That's not your concern," he said, "but I'll tell you this much. I'm 49 years old. I've built an empire that will outlast me by centuries. I've changed the world in ways most people don't even realize. But none of it means anything if it dies with me. Legacy isn't about what you build, Miss Carter. It's about who carries it forward. I want a child who is mine in every way that matters, raised with my values, educated to take over what I've created, shaped to be better than I was. This is the only way I can have that." There was something almost vulnerable in the admission, which made it more disturbing. Roman Calder didn't want a child. He wanted a successor, an heir to train and mold. The baby would be born into a life of impossible expectations, raised by a man who saw people as investments. Nia should have walked away. Every instinct screamed at her to run from this cold office and colder man, to take her chances with eviction and poverty, to bet on herself the way she always had. But as she looked down at the contract, all she could think about was the letter from her landlord, the student loan payment, the $32 she'd spent on this blazer from Goodwill so she'd look presentable for whatever this meeting turned out to be. The years of scraping by, of choosing between food and art supplies, of being invisible to everyone except the people who wanted to collect money she didn't have. Roman was right. Freedom meant nothing when you were drowning. "I need to think about it," Nia said. "Of course, take the contract. Review it with a lawyer if you'd like, though you'll find it's airtight." Roman stood, signaling the meeting was over. "The elevator will take you down. When you've decided, call the number on the last page. Someone will arrange everything." Nia took the folder with shaking hands. She was halfway to the elevator when Roman's voice stopped her. "Miss Carter, one more thing. In the photographs there's an image of you from 3 years ago. Do you remember the incident?" Nia turned back. Roman had pulled up something on his computer, angling the screen toward her. It was a news article. The photo grainy and half forgotten. A car accident. A child pulled from the wreckage. Nia barely remembered it, some instinct overriding common sense, yanking open a crumpled door before smoke became flame. "You saved a life that day," Roman said. "You didn't stay for the ambulance. Didn't give your name. You just disappeared back into the city like you were never there." His eyes met hers, and for a moment they weren't cold at all. "You're capable of extraordinary things, Miss Carter, even if no one's ever noticed before." "I notice." The elevator doors closed on his words, and Nia rode down 23 floors with her heart in her throat, not sure if she'd just been offered salvation or sold herself to the devil. She signed the contract 18 hours later, in Roman's office, with lawyers she couldn't afford watching every pen stroke. The money would be held in escrow until the birth. The terms were exactly as brutal as he'd promised. 9 months of her life, complete control, a child she'd carry and surrender. When the ink dried, Roman shook her hand. His grip was cool and firm. "Welcome to your new life," he said. Nia moved into the penthouse 3 days later with a single suitcase and a growing sense of unreality. The space was 70 floors above Manhattan, all windows and empty luxury. Her bedroom was larger than her entire studio apartment had been. The closet was already filled with clothes in her exact size. Designer labels she'd never heard of, everything in the muted tones Roman seemed to prefer. The bathroom had heated floors. The bed was obscenely comfortable. It was the most beautiful prison she'd ever seen. Roman gave her a tour with the enthusiasm of someone showing off a particularly efficient filing system. The kitchen was stocked with organic, nutritionist-approved food. The gym had equipment she didn't know how to use. The living room had art worth more than most people earned in a lifetime, sterile and perfectly arranged. "Your studio is on the next floor," Roman said, leading her down a hallway. He opened a door and Nia's breath caught. The room was flooded with northern light, all windows facing the city. There were easels, canvases, paints in every conceivable color. Supplies she'd coveted for years, professional-grade materials she'd never been able to afford. It was an artist's dream, and it made her want to cry. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's adequate. You'll be here for 9 months. I assumed you'd want to continue your work." Roman walked to the window. "The pregnancy process begins tomorrow. First round of hormone treatments. Then the retrieval and implantation. The doctor assures me we have an excellent chance of success on the first attempt." The clinical language made Nia's stomach turn. "And you'll be there? For the procedures?" "Of course, I'm invested in the outcome." "I meant, do you have to be in the room?" Roman turned to look at her fully. "Yes, Miss Carter, I'll be present for every appointment, every test, every milestone. This child is mine. I intend to be involved from the very beginning." He moved closer, and Nia fought the urge to step back. "You need to understand something. For the next 9 months, you belong to me. Your body, your time, your choices. I own all of it. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." He said it without malice, just stating a fact, and that made it so much worse. The IVF process was invasive in ways Nia hadn't prepared for. Hormone injections that made her emotional and nauseous. Ultrasounds, where Roman stood beside the doctor, watching the screen with an intensity that made her skin crawl. He asked technical questions, wanted detailed explanations, treated her reproductive system like a science experiment he was personally overseeing. The implantation happened on a Tuesday. Nia lay on the table, feet in stirrups, staring at the ceiling while a doctor she'd met once inserted an embryo created from the genetic material of 2 people she'd never know. Roman stood at her shoulder, his presence overwhelming even when he was silent. "This is it," the doctor said cheerfully. "Now we wait 2 weeks and test." 2 weeks of Roman's suffocating attention. He controlled everything. Her meals appeared at exact times, balanced and joyless. Her phone had been replaced with one he provided, already loaded with pregnancy tracking apps and his personal contact. When she tried to leave the penthouse for a walk, security appeared from nowhere. "Mr. Calder requests you remain inside today," the head of security said. Sylvester, a man built like a wall with eyes that held too much pity. "Air quality index is elevated, not safe for the potential pregnancy." Nia wasn't pregnant yet. Might not be at all, and already she was a prisoner. The 2 weeks crawled by, Nia painted in her studio, trying to ignore the cameras she'd found in every room. Not in the bathroom or bedroom, Roman had assured her, as if that made it acceptable, just the common areas. For her safety, on the 14th day, Roman knocked on her bedroom door at 6 in the morning. "It's time to test," he said. The pregnancy test was digital, expensive, the kind that spelled out the result in unambiguous words. Nia peed on the stick in Roman's bathroom, her hands shaking, while he waited outside the door. The 3 minutes felt like hours. When the screen lit up with the word pregnant, Nia's knees went weak. She opened the door. Roman's eyes went immediately to the test in her hand. She watched his face for some reaction, happiness, excitement, anything human. Instead, she saw only a flash of relief, so profound it bordered on desperation, there and gone in an instant. "Good," he said quietly. "Very good." He took the test from her, studying it like he didn't quite trust the result. "I'll call the doctor. We'll do a blood test to confirm, then schedule the first ultrasound." His eyes met hers. "You've done well, Miss Carter." Like she was a employee who'd completed a task. Not a woman who'd just learned she was creating a life. The first trimester was brutal. Morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion that pulled her under like a riptide. Nia spent hours in the bathroom, sick and miserable, while Roman's perfect penthouse mocked her with its pristine emptiness. The worst night happened at 2 a.m, 6 weeks into the pregnancy. Nia woke with barely enough time to stumble to the toilet before her stomach revolted. She retched until there was nothing left, then dry heaved while tears streamed down her face. She was alone and trapped and carrying a stranger's child for money, and the full weight of what she'd agreed to crashed over her. She didn't hear Roman enter. One moment she was alone, the next he was there, kneeling beside her in his expensive pajamas like it was perfectly normal. He gathered her hair back with surprisingly gentle hands, held it while her body rebelled again. When the worst passed, he wet a washcloth and cleaned her face with careful precision. His hands were cool against her overheated skin. For a moment, Nia let herself lean into the comfort, let herself pretend this cold man cared about more than his investment. "Better?" Roman asked. Nia nodded, not trusting her voice. He helped her stand, one hand on her elbow, steadying her. Their faces were close in the small bathroom, close enough that she could see flecks of silver in his grey eyes, close enough to feel the warmth of his breath. "This is normal," he said quietly. "The doctor assured me first, trimester sickness is a positive sign. It means the pregnancy is progressing well." And just like that, the moment shattered. He wasn't comforting her. He was protecting his investment, monitoring his asset. "Of course," Nia said, pulling away. "Wouldn't want anything to damage the merchandise." Something flickered in Roman's expression. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" Nia was too tired and sick to filter herself. "I'm an incubator to you. A well-compensated one, but that's all this is. You don't have to pretend you care about me as a person, Roman. We both know the truth." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, instead of arguing, he simply said, "Go back to bed. I'll bring you crackers and ginger tea. It should help." He did. 10 minutes later, setting the tray on her nightstand without a word. Then he left, closing the door behind him with a soft click that felt like a period at the end of a sentence. Nia lay in the dark, one hand on her still flat stomach, and wondered how she'd survive 7 more months of this. The weeks blurred together. Doctor's appointments where Roman took notes, ultrasounds where she saw the tiny cluster of cells becoming something recognizably human, while Roman stared at the screen with an expression she couldn't read. The penthouse became her entire world, luxurious and suffocating. She tried to maintain boundaries, ate meals in her room instead of with Roman, painted for hours to avoid conversation, treated him with cool professionalism, the same energy he'd shown her from the beginning. But Roman was everywhere. He asked about her art, left books he thought she'd enjoy on the kitchen counter, adjusted the temperature when he noticed she was cold. Small gestures that felt like encroachment, his presence invading every corner of her carefully maintained distance. At week 12, everything changed. The appointment was routine, or supposed to be. Genetic testing, checking for chromosomal abnormalities. Nia had done the blood draw, was waiting in the exam room while Roman spoke with the doctor in the hallway. She was scrolling through her phone when she heard the doctor's voice, low and urgent. "Mr. Calder, there's been a significant error. The paternity results show you're the biological father. The clinic used your stored sample instead of the donor sperm." Nia's heart stopped. "I see," Roman said, and his voice was perfectly, terrifyingly calm. "Run the test again to confirm. And don't tell her yet. I need to handle this carefully." The world tilted sideways. Nia sat frozen, phone forgotten, as the implications crashed through her. The baby wasn't from anonymous donors. It was half hers, half Roman's. A real child. Their child. And he'd known, or was finding out now, and his first instinct was to hide it from her. She waited until Roman came back into the room, his expression giving nothing away. "Everything looks good," he said smoothly. The doctor wants to run a secondary panel, just to be thorough. Standard procedure. He was lying to her face. Naya waited 3 days, watching Roman for any sign of guilt or hesitation. He gave her nothing, acted as though everything was exactly as it had been, all while knowing the fundamental nature of their arrangement had changed. On the 4th day, she couldn't stand it anymore. "I know," she said over breakfast. Roman was reading something on his tablet, drinking coffee. He looked up, politely attentive. "About the paternity test. I heard you and the doctor." Roman set down his tablet with deliberate care. "I see. That's it? That's all you have to say?" Nia's hands were shaking. "This baby is yours. Actually, biologically yours. And you were just going to— What, pretend it wasn't? I was going to tell you when I'd consulted with legal counsel about the implications," Roman said. "The contract clearly states—" "I don't care what the contract says." Nia stood up, pacing. "This changes everything. This baby is half mine, half yours. It's real now, and your first instinct was to lie to me." "My first instinct was to protect what's mine," Roman corrected. "The embryo was created according to specific protocols. The clinic's error doesn't negate our agreement." "How long have you known?" The question came out broken. Roman's silence was an answer. 3 weeks, Nia said, watching his face. "You've known for 3 weeks. Watched me, talked to me, all while knowing and saying nothing." "The situation required careful handling," Roman said, standing now too. "I've had lawyers reviewing the contract. The mix-up, however unfortunate, doesn't change the legal reality. The baby is mine, Nia. I'm offering to triple your compensation, $2.7 billion, in exchange for your continued cooperation and silence." He was trying to buy her. Again, as if money could paper over this betrayal. "What if I don't want to cooperate?" Nia asked. "What if I want to keep my baby?" Something dangerous flashed in Roman's eyes. "Then you'll discover exactly how binding the contract you signed actually is. You agreed to carry a child and surrender all parental rights. That agreement holds regardless of whose genetic material was used. If you try to fight me, I have $40 billion and the best lawyers in the world. You have $67 and good intentions. How do you think that ends?" The threat was delivered in the same calm tone he used for everything, which made it more terrifying. Nia saw then what she'd been too desperate to see before. Roman Calder wasn't just cold, he was ruthless, and she'd signed herself over to him. "I could go to the press," she said weakly. "You could, and you'd be destroyed by morning. I control narratives, Miss Carter. It's what I do." Roman moved closer, and Nia forced herself not to retreat. "But I'd rather not go to war with you. Accept the new terms. $2.7 billion, a clean break after the birth, and you walk away rich enough to never think about this again." "How can I not think about it?" Nia's voice cracked. "It's my child. It's a collection of cells that will become a person I raise. You're the surrogate." That was always the arrangement. Roman's expression softened, just slightly. "I know this is difficult, but fighting me will only make you miserable. Take the money, Nia. Let me handle the rest." She wanted to scream, to run, to somehow undo the signature that had seemed like salvation 3 months ago. But Roman was right. She had no power here. He'd made sure of that from the beginning. "I need time to think," she said. "Take all the time you need," Roman replied. "But understand, the pregnancy continues regardless. You're 12 weeks along, past the point where termination is a simple option, and the contract explicitly forbids it anyway. This baby will be born. The only question is whether you make this easy or hard on yourself." He left her standing in the kitchen, surrounded by windows and sky, trapped 70 floors above a city that suddenly felt impossibly far away. Nia spent the next week barely speaking to Roman. He gave her space, or seemed to, though she knew he was watching. Always watching. She painted furiously, angry, abstract pieces that bled reds and blacks across canvas. At night she lay awake with one hand on her growing belly, feeling the first flutters of movement and wondering what she'd done. Roman changed tactics on the 8th day of her silence. Naya came down to breakfast to find the kitchen transformed. Fresh flowers, her favorite pastries from a bakery in Brooklyn she'd mentioned once, months ago. And Roman, actually cooking, which she'd never seen him do. "I thought we could talk," he said, plating eggs with surprising competence. "Really talk, not negotiate." Nia sat warily. "What's left to say?" "A lot, apparently." Roman set the plate in front of her. "I've handled this badly. The secrecy, the threats, I'm not usually—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "You're not just a surrogate to me anymore, Nia. I need you to know that." It was the first time he'd used her first name without prompting. "Then what am I?" she asked. Roman sat across from her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "I don't know yet, but you're carrying my child, my biological child. That matters." "It's my child too," Naya said quietly. "I know." Roman ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the perfect styling. "The situation is complicated, more than I anticipated. But I'm asking you, give me a chance to figure this out. Don't run. Don't fight me. Just stay. Let me try to make this something other than a transaction." Naya looked at the breakfast he'd made, the flowers, the obvious effort. Roman called her, the man who controlled everything was trying. It felt like manipulation, probably was manipulation, but there was something almost genuine in his discomfort. "What does that look like?" she asked. "Making this something else?" "I don't know," Roman admitted, "but we have 6 more months to find out." Against every instinct, Nia felt herself softening. Maybe it was hormones. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the desperate hope that this terrifying situation could become something bearable. "Okay," she said, "we try." Roman's smile was small but real. "Thank you." He kept his word. Over the next weeks, Roman transformed from warden to something almost like a companion. He asked about her art, actually listened to the answers, commissioned a famous sculptor to give her private lessons just because she'd mentioned admiring the artist's work, stopped hovering quite so oppressively. Though Naya knew the cameras were still there, the control just better disguised. They started having dinner together, real conversations. Roman told her about building his company, the early years of scrambling and risk. Nia told him about foster care, the families that kept her for the checks, and the few that almost felt real. They were circling each other, learning, testing boundaries. At week 20, Roman rented the entire Metropolitan Museum of Art for a single evening. "I thought you might want to see the new exhibition," he said, as casual as if he'd suggested coffee. Without crowds, walking through the empty museum felt like stepping into a dream. Just Naya and Roman and centuries of art, their footsteps echoing in galleries meant for thousands. Roman knew surprising amounts about the paintings, pointed out details she'd missed, listened when she explained technique and color theory. They ended in front of a Rothko, those massive blocks of color that seemed to vibrate with emotion. "Do you ever wonder what he was feeling when he painted this?" Nia asked. "Despair, probably," Roman said. Rothko was notoriously depressed. "I think it's hope," Naya countered. "Look at the way the colors interact. The red pushing against the orange. It's violent but beautiful, painful but transcendent. That's not despair. That's someone fighting to feel something real." Roman looked at her, instead of the painting. "Is that what you're doing? Fighting to feel something real?" The air between them shifted, charged with something Naya had been trying to ignore for weeks. Roman was standing too close, his eyes were too intent, and she was suddenly painfully aware of him, not as her captor or employer, but as a man. Attractive, intelligent, dangerous. "I should feel nothing but anger toward you," Naya said quietly. "You've manipulated me, controlled me, lied to me." "I know, but I don't." I don't know what I feel anymore. Roman reached out slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, he brushed a curl behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. I didn't expect you, he said. I thought I was hiring a surrogate. Instead I got you. And I don't know what to do with that. Nia's heart was hammering. Roman, he leaned in, and she could have stopped him. Should have stopped him. Instead, she closed the distance, kissing him in front of a painting about beautiful violence. The kiss was electric, months of tension igniting all at once. Roman's hand came up to cup her face, gentle despite the intensity. Nia grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer, the baby barely there between them. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Roman rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he said. The worst. Nia agreed. They kissed again anyway, there in the empty museum, making a mistake that felt inevitable. They didn't talk about the kiss. Not that night in the car back to the penthouse, not the next morning when Nia came down to breakfast and found Roman already gone on business. For 3 days they orbited each other carefully, the air thick with everything unsaid. Nia told herself it meant nothing. Hormones and proximity and the strange intimacy of their situation. Roman was still the man who'd surveilled her, controlled her, built a cage, even if he'd gilded it. One kiss didn't change that. But her body disagreed. She found herself listening for his footsteps, looking up when he entered a room, remembering the taste of him with an intensity that felt like betrayal. On the 4th day, Nia made a mistake. She was looking for a book Roman had mentioned, something about postmodern architecture he thought she'd find interesting. His study was technically off-limits, but he'd been more relaxed about boundaries lately. She thought he wouldn't mind. The book wasn't on the shelves, but when Nia checked the desk drawer, she found something else. A file folder, thick, worn at the edges like it had been opened countless times. Her name on the tab in Roman's precise handwriting. Not the file from their first meeting, the one with surveillance photos from the past year. This one was older, the pages inside yellowed at the edges. Nia's hands shook as she opened it. The first page was a newspaper clipping from 5 years ago. Small story, barely made the local news. Woman saves child from burning vehicle. There was a photo, grainy and taken from a distance. Nia barely recognized herself at 18, thinner, harder, pulling a screaming kid from a smoking car while bystanders just watched. She remembered that day in fragments. The smell of gasoline, the heat, the terrible choice of doing nothing or doing something possibly stupid. She'd gotten the boy out, handed him to someone, and left before the ambulance arrived because she'd had a shift at the restaurant and couldn't afford to lose the job. She'd never thought about it again. Just another day in a city full of people who needed help she barely knew how to give. But Roman had thought about it. The next page was a private investigator's report dated 3 months after the accident. Her full name, address, employment history, details about her life, assembled by someone who'd been searching. More reports followed, tracking her through the years. Where she worked, where she went to school, who she dated, briefly, unsuccessfully. Medical records that shouldn't have been accessible. Psychological profiles based on observed behavior. 5 years of documentation, 5 years of watching. There were photos she'd never seen anyone take. Nia at 19, painting a mural under a bridge. At 20, serving coffee with paint still under her fingernails. At 21, sitting alone in her studio apartment on Christmas, eating ramen and working on a canvas. Every moment catalogued, studied, analyzed. And then, 3 months ago, a medical report. Analysis of her suitability for surrogacy, genetic screening, fertility markers. A final page with a single handwritten note in Roman's writing, perfect. Proceed with offer. The file slipped from Nia's numb fingers, pages scattering across the expensive rug. This wasn't research. This was obsession. Roman had been watching her for 5 years, tracking her life in meticulous detail, waiting for the right moment to what? Acquire her? You weren't supposed to find that. Nia spun. Roman stood in the doorway, still in his coat, briefcase in hand. He must have come home early. His eyes went to the scattered papers, then to her face. Something flickered in his expression. Not quite guilt, but close. 5 years, Nia said. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. You've been watching me for 5 years. Roman set down his briefcase with careful precision. Yes, the accident. The boy I pulled from the car, that's when this started. His name is Leo. He's my nephew, my sister's only child. Roman moved into the room, not approaching her, just closing the distance to the windows. The car was hit by a drunk driver. Everyone just stood there with their phones out, recording, posting, doing nothing. Except you. You risked your life for a stranger's child without hesitating. So you've been stalking me ever since? For 5 years? I've been watching over you, Roman corrected. There's a difference. No, there really isn't. Nia's hands were shaking. This is insane, Roman. You've documented my entire adult life. You knew where I lived, where I worked, who I dated. You watched me, and I had no idea. I needed to be certain. Roman's voice was maddeningly calm. When I decided to have a child via surrogate, I couldn't trust it to some agency algorithm. I needed someone I understood. Someone I knew would be strong enough, resilient enough. You saved Leo without thinking about yourself. That selflessness, that instinct to protect, that's what I wanted for my child's carrier. The clinical language made Nia want to scream. I'm not a carrier, I'm a person you've been treating like a research subject. I know you're a person, Nia. I know you better than anyone alive. Roman finally turned to face her. I know you paint when you're anxious. I know you volunteer at the children's clinic on Thursdays because you want to give kids the stability you never had. I know you take your coffee black because you can't afford cream and you've convinced yourself you prefer it that way. I know you're terrified of being forgotten, of disappearing without leaving a mark on the world. I know you. You know facts about me. That's not the same thing, isn't it? Roman moved closer. I know you stayed in that foster home with the father who drank too much because the mother's sister had Down syndrome and you were the only one patient enough to help her with her puzzles. I know you gave your scholarship money to your roommate when her brother got sick, even though it meant you had to drop out for a semester. I know you're so busy taking care of everyone else that you've never let anyone take care of you. Each word was accurate and unbearable. Nia felt stripped bare, every private moment of her life suddenly visible to this man who'd been watching from the shadows. Why didn't you just introduce yourself like a normal person? She asked. 5 years, Roman. You could have just talked to me. For the first time, Roman looked almost vulnerable. And said what? Hello, I'm a billionaire who watched you save my nephew. I've become fascinated with you. Would you like to have coffee? You would have thought I was insane. As opposed to now, when I definitely think you're insane. Fair point. Roman ran a hand through his hair. I told myself I was protecting you, making sure you were safe. Your neighborhood wasn't exactly secure. I had security keep an eye on your building. I paid your landlord to fix the heat. That winter it broke. Small things. I didn't mean for it to become obsessive, controlling, deeply disturbing. I was going to say complicated. Roman's jaw tightened. When I decided to pursue surrogacy, you were the only person I could imagine. It seemed like fate. I'd been given a reason to finally approach you, to bring you into my life legitimately. I convinced myself the arrangement was practical, beneficial for both of us. I didn't expect, what? That I'd be a real person, instead of the character you'd built in your head. Roman's silence was answer enough. Nia looked at the scattered papers, 5 years of her life, reduced to data points and photographs. She should be terrified, should run, find a lawyer, break this contract somehow, even if it bankrupted her. Roman Calder wasn't morally grey. He was obsessive, controlling, potentially dangerous. But underneath, The fear was something else. A sick, twisted part of her that felt seen for the first time in her life. Roman had watched her when she thought she was invisible, had noticed her, remembered her, thought she mattered enough to document. It was the attention she'd craved her whole life, delivered in the most disturbing package possible. "I can't do this," Nia said quietly. "I can't stay here knowing you've been watching me like some kind of experiment. That kiss, this whole thing where we pretend we're building something real, it's based on a lie. What if it's not?" Roman's voice was rough. "What if it started as obsession but became something else? I didn't know you would be funny, that you'd challenge me, that you'd look at my world and find it lacking. The woman in those files, I was fascinated by her. But you, Nia, the real you, you're so much more than I imagined. That doesn't make this okay. I know. Nothing makes this okay." Roman crossed to her, stepping over the scattered papers. "But I'm asking anyway. Stay. Not because of the contract or the money. Stay because somewhere in this mess there's something real between us. I feel it. I think you do too." Nia wanted to say no. Wanted to be strong enough to walk away from the money, the penthouse, the man who'd built his life around controlling her. But she was 20 weeks pregnant with his child, and when he looked at her like that, like she was the only solid thing in his world, she felt herself wavering. "I need space," she said finally. "Real space. No surveillance, no security following me. I need to think without you in my head." Roman looked like she'd struck him, but he nodded. "Okay. How much space?" "I don't know. I need to leave the penthouse, see my old friends, remember who I was before all of this. For how long?" "As long as it takes." The muscle in Roman's jaw twitched, his control visibly fraying. Then, slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a black credit card. "Take this. Stay wherever you want. Do whatever you need. I'll have Sylvester remove the tracking from your phone. You'll have complete freedom." Nia took the card, surprised. "Just like that? You're letting me go? I'm giving you a choice. I should have done that from the beginning." Roman's eyes were dark, unreadable. "But Nia, understand something. If you come back, it has to be because you want to. Not because of money or contracts or obligation. I need to know that you're choosing this. Choosing me. And if I don't come back, then I'll have my lawyers draw up new custody arrangements. We'll figure out co-parenting. I won't force you into anything again." He paused. "But I hope you come back." The next morning, Nia left the penthouse with a single bag, the same one she'd arrived with 5 months ago. Roman was already gone, giving her space, even in the leaving. Sylvester drove her in silence to an address in Brooklyn, a neighborhood she used to know. Her friend Jess opened the door and immediately pulled Nia into a hug that made her want to cry. "Oh my God, look at you," Jess said, pulling back to examine Nia's visible bump. "I've been so worried. You just disappeared. And then I saw those photos in the surveillance files online and—" "Wait, what photos online?" Jess's face went pale. "You haven't seen?" "Nia, it's everywhere. Someone leaked files about you and Roman Calder, the contract, the surveillance, everything." Nia's stomach dropped. She pulled out her phone, the one Sylvester had supposedly cleaned, and searched her name. The top result was a headline from an hour ago. "Tech billionaire's twisted pregnancy contract, surveillance, control, and a $900 million baby." Below it, photos, her surveillance pictures, pages from the contract with certain sections highlighted. A statement from someone anonymous claiming to be a former Calder employee, detailing Roman's obsessive behavior and complete disregard for consent. The article painted Roman as a predator and Nia as his victim. It mentioned her age, her foster care background, made her sound desperate and exploited. There were quotes from legal experts calling the contract morally reprehensible, even if technically legal. And at the center of it all was a name Nia recognized from the museum. The elegant woman who'd approached them, ice in her eyes. Isabel Calder, Roman's ex-wife. The article mentioned she'd come forward out of concern for the young woman being exploited by her former husband. Naya's phone buzzed. A text from Roman. "I'm handling it. Don't engage with press. You're safe." But she wasn't safe. Her name was attached to this story forever now. Her private hell made public entertainment. "I need to see him," Nia said. Jess grabbed her arm. "Are you serious? Nia, this is your chance to get away. Everyone is on your side right now. You could break that contract, keep the baby. He'd be crucified if he fought you." Nia pulled away, already calling for a car. "You don't understand. This isn't. He's not. It's more complicated than the articles make it sound." "Is it? Because it sounds like he stalked you, trapped you, and now you're defending him." That's textbook Stockholm Syndrome. Maybe it was. Nia didn't know anymore. All she knew was that Roman was being destroyed publicly, and her first instinct was to go to him, which said something deeply disturbing about who she'd become in 5 months. The ride back to the penthouse took 40 minutes through traffic. Nia spent it reading article after article, watching Roman's reputation disintegrate in real time. Business partners issuing statements of concern, board members calling for his resignation, activists demanding investigation into whether the contract violated trafficking laws. Someone had done this deliberately, released the most damaging parts of their story at the exact moment to cause maximum harm. And Nia had a pretty good idea who. She found Roman in his study, staring at his laptop with an expression of total detachment, like he was watching someone else's life fall apart. 3 phones were on the desk, all buzzing with ignored calls. "You came back," he said without looking up. "Did you know this was coming?" Nia asked. "I suspected Isabel would try something. I didn't anticipate this level of thoroughness." Roman finally met her eyes. "My lawyers are working on it. Most of what she leaked is protected by NDA. We'll sue, get injunctions. By tomorrow the story will be buried. That's not how the internet works, Roman. This is permanent. Then we'll deal with it permanently." His voice was flat, empty of emotion. "You should go back to your friend's apartment. Stay away from this mess. I'll make a statement that you were coerced, that the contract is void, whatever narrative protects you. Stop trying to control the story for once." Nia crossed to the desk, forcing him to look at her. "Maybe this needed to come out. Maybe people should know what you did." "Agreed. I'm a monster. The articles are right." Roman's smile was bitter. "I stalked you, manipulated you, trapped you in a contract designed to give me complete control. The fact that I convinced myself I was protecting you just makes it worse. You should hate me." "I should," Nia agreed. "But I don't. That's the really messed up part. I should be grateful this came out, grateful for the chance to escape. Instead, I'm here. Why?" The question was raw, vulnerable. "Why did you come back?" "Because you're letting me go. Actually letting me go. You gave me freedom, and I don't know what that means, but I needed to see you." Roman stood, coming around the desk. "Nia, listen to me. I'm about to do something very stupid. I'm going to hold a press conference and admit to everything. Confirm the surveillance, the contract, all of it. I'm going to destroy what's left of my reputation to give you a way out." "Why would you do that?" "Because you were right. This started as control, obsession, me treating you like a problem to solve instead of a person. But somewhere it became, you became." Roman stopped, struggling. "I don't know how to love people correctly. I only know how to possess them. But I think what I feel for you might be love, even if it's the most selfish, twisted version possible. And if I love you, I have to let you go. If you were Nia, would you stay with Roman despite everything? Or would you see this as your chance to escape? What would you do?" The words hung between them. Roman had just admitted to loving her in the same breath as admitting he didn't know how to do it right. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said. "Don't hold the press conference," Nia said quietly. Not yet. Let me think. There's nothing to think about. Isabel released this to destroy me, and she's succeeding. The best thing I can do is control the narrative on my terms. Admit fault, pay whatever price the court of public opinion demands, and set you free legally and publicly. What happens to the baby? Roman's expression shuttered. We'll work out custody. I'll provide for both of you. You'll never have to see me again if you don't want to. The offer should have been relief. Instead, it felt like loss. Naya's phone buzzed again. Another message, this one, from a number she didn't recognize. She opened it and went cold. It was a photo. Roman at a restaurant, just days ago, sitting across from an elegant blonde woman. Isabel. They were leaning close, talking intently. The photo was angled to look intimate, almost romantic. Below it, a message. He met with me 3 times while romancing you. Ask him what we discussed. Ask him if any of it was real. Nia held up the phone. Is this true? You've been meeting with Isabel? Roman glanced at the photo and sighed. Yes. She requested meetings to discuss business. I thought if I gave her some of what she wanted, board seats, contracts, she'd back off. I was wrong. You didn't think to mention that you were having secret meetings with your ex-wife who clearly still wants you? They weren't secret, they were private. And what Isabel wants is to destroy me, not reconcile. She's been trying to sabotage my company for years. I thought I could negotiate a truce. Roman moved closer. But she was documenting everything, building a case. Those meetings where I thought we were discussing business, she was probably recording, gathering evidence of, I don't even know what. That I'm obsessive, controlling, exactly what the articles say. Are you? Still, Nia hated how small her voice sounded. Is everything you've said and done these past weeks just more manipulation? The museum, the conversations, letting me go. Is it all strategy? No. God. No. Roman reached for her, then stopped himself. I meant what I said. All of it. But I understand if you can't believe me. My track record isn't exactly trustworthy. Nia looked at the man in front of her, this brilliant, damaged, impossible person who'd upended her life. She thought about the surveillance files that went back 5 years. The contract designed to control every aspect of her pregnancy. The cameras, the tracking, the cage, made of glass and money. But she also thought about Roman holding her hair while she was sick. The museum rented just for her. The way he'd looked at the ultrasound screen when he first heard the heartbeat, like he was seeing a miracle. The tremor in his hands when he'd touched her belly and felt the baby kick. I'm not staying because I forgive you, Nia said finally. I'm not even sure I trust you. But I'm 6 months pregnant with your child, and walking away means fighting custody battles for the rest of my life. I'd rather figure out if we can make this work. That's not a good enough reason. It's the only honest reason I have right now. Nia met his eyes. You wanted honesty. Roman, here it is. I don't know what I feel for you. Sometimes I think it might be love. Sometimes I think it's Stockholm Syndrome. But I know I don't want to leave. Not yet. So don't blow up your life in some grand gesture. Hold the press conference if you want, but do it because it's right, not because you think I need saving. Roman studied her for a long moment. Then, instead of arguing, he pulled her into his arms. Nia let herself lean into him, feeling the baby move between them, a reminder that whatever happened, they were tied together now. I'm going to do the press conference, Roman said against her hair. But not to set you free, to tell the truth. No more secrets. Promise? I promise. The press conference happened the next day at Roman's company headquarters. Nia watched from the penthouse as every major network covered it live. Roman stood at a podium, looking simultaneously powerful and vulnerable, and proceeded to commit professional suicide. Everything in the leaked files is accurate, he began. I surveilled Nia Carter for 5 years before approaching her with a surrogacy contract. I used my resources to track her life, compile information she never consented to sharing. When I offered her the contract, I deliberately structured it to give me maximum control. I'm guilty of obsessive behavior, of treating another human being like an acquisition, of using my wealth and power to manipulate someone in a desperate situation. The reporters erupted with questions. Roman waited for silence. I'm not here to make excuses. There are none. What I did was wrong, legally, morally, ethically. I've spent my career believing that enough money and control could solve any problem, including my own loneliness. Nia Carter deserved better than to be treated as a solution to my needs. He paused, and something shifted in his expression. But I need to make one thing clear. Nia's not my victim. She's the strongest person I've ever met. And if by some miracle she's chosen to stay with me despite everything I've done, that's her choice, her agency, not Stockholm Syndrome or coercion. Her decision. He took a breath. I'm stepping down as CEO of Calder Technologies, effective immediately. I'll be entering therapy, and I've dissolved the surrogacy contract in full. Nia Carter owes me nothing. The baby we're expecting will be raised with shared custody, assuming she wants my involvement. If she doesn't, I'll respect that too. I'm making a $10 billion donation to organizations supporting foster youth and exploitation victims, because my money should do something useful instead of just building cages. He looked directly into the camera. Nia, if you're watching, I'm sorry. For all of it. The questions that followed were vicious. Reporters demanded to know if he'd face charges, if the board would sue, if Nia had been paid off. Roman answered everything with brutal honesty, refusing to spin or deflect. Watching him dismantle his own reputation, Nia felt something crack open in her chest. This wasn't strategy. Roman was genuinely trying to atone, even if it destroyed him. Her phone rang. Sylvester, Miss Carter, you need to come down to the lobby. There's a situation. Nia's heart sank. Press? Worse, Mrs. Calder is here. She's demanding to see you. Isabel Calder was waiting in the lobby, flanked by 2 lawyers and radiating cold fury. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, perfect hair, perfect suit, everything about her designed to intimidate. Nia Carter, Isabel said, looking her up and down. Pregnant suits you. Very maternal. What do you want? Nia kept her distance, one hand protectively on her belly. I want to make you an offer. $3 billion to disappear after the birth, give me the baby, sign away all custody, and walk away rich enough to never worry about anything again. The baby isn't yours, isn't it? Roman is still legally my husband. We never finalized the divorce, just separated. Under New York law, that makes any child born during the marriage presumptively mine as well. Isabel's smile was sharp. I know things about Roman you don't. I spent 12 years married to him. I know what he's capable of when he wants something. The surveillance, the control, that's just the beginning. He'll consume you, Nia. He'll take and take until there's nothing left. I'm offering you an escape. Why do you even want his baby? You clearly hate him. I don't hate Roman. I love him. I've loved him for 20 years, since before he built his empire. But I couldn't give him children, and it destroyed our marriage. Isabel's mask slipped slightly, showing real pain beneath. This baby, his biological child, it's what we were supposed to have together. You're just the incubator. A mistake. Let me fix this. Nia saw it then. Isabel wasn't trying to destroy Roman out of revenge. She was trying to get him back. The leaked files, the public scandal forcing him to step down, it was all designed to isolate him, make Nia leave, and position Isabel as the one who'd stood by him. You're still in love with him, Nia said. I never stopped. And once you're gone, once you realize what life with Roman actually costs, he'll come back to me. We understand each other. We're the same kind of broken. Isabel pulled out a contract. $3 billion, Nia. More money than Roman ever offered you. Take it and run. For a moment, Nia was tempted, not by the money, but by the escape. Isabel was right about one thing. Life with Roman would be complicated, messy, possibly painful. Loving someone morally grey meant accepting their darkness along with their light. But Nia had spent her whole life running from complications, keeping people at arm's length because getting close meant getting hurt. And where had that gotten her? Alone, invisible, painting for an audience of none. "No," Nia said, "I'm keeping my baby, and I'm keeping Roman, if he'll have me." Isabel's expression went ice cold. "You're making a mistake." "Probably. But it's my mistake to make." The lawyers flanking Isabel stirred. One of them, a severe woman in her 50s, stepped forward. "Mrs. Calder has one more card to play. We're filing for an emergency custody hearing. We have documentation of Mr. Calder's unstable behavior, his admission of surveillance and control, his stepping down from his company. We're arguing that he's unfit to parent and that you, Miss Carter, are too young and have been too compromised by his manipulation to make sound decisions. We're asking the court to grant temporary custody to Mrs. Calder upon the birth." "You can't do that," Nia said, but her voice shook. "The baby isn't even born yet. We're asking for a pre-birth injunction. It's rare, but not unprecedented when there's evidence of danger to the child." The lawyer handed Nia a sheaf of papers. "Court date is in 3 weeks. I'd suggest you get a lawyer." They left Nia standing in the lobby, contract and court summons in hand, her entire world tilting sideways again. Roman arrived 20 minutes later, still in his suit from the press conference, looking exhausted. "Sylvester called me." "What did Isabel want?" "To take our baby." Nia handed him the court documents. "She's filing for custody, says you're unfit and I'm too manipulated to parent. Roman, can she actually do this?" Roman read through the papers, his expression darkening with each page. "She's using everything I said in the press conference against me. My own admissions of obsessive behavior, stepping down from the company, the surveillance. She's built a case that I'm unstable." "Are you?" "Probably." Roman looked at her. "But I'm trying not to be. That has to count for something. What do? We fight. Together." Roman reached for her hand. "Nia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Do you want this baby? Not because of money or obligation, but actually want to be a mother?" Nia thought about the flutter of movement she felt every day now, the way her hand automatically went to her belly when she was nervous, the dreams she'd started having of a little boy with Roman's eyes and her smile. "Yes," she said. "I want our baby." Then we go to court, and we tell them that. 2 imperfect people who are trying to be better. It's not a fairy tale, but it's real. The 3 weeks before the hearing were brutal. Paparazzi camped outside the building. Op-eds debated whether Nia was a victim or a gold digger. Legal experts picked apart every aspect of their relationship. Someone leaked Nia's foster care records, her struggles in school, an ex-boyfriend who claimed she'd always been unstable and desperate for attention. Through it all, Roman stayed steady. He hired the best family law attorney in New York. He started therapy, twice a week, sessions he actually attended. He removed every camera from the penthouse except the security ones in common areas, gave Nia complete access to his phone and computer, stopped trying to control anything. "I'm learning how to trust," he told her one night. They were sitting on the couch, Nia's feet in his lap while he rubbed them, the baby doing gymnastics between them. "It's harder than running a company. You're doing okay," Nia said. Then, because honesty seemed important, "Mostly. You still rearranged my studio when I was sleeping. I was optimizing the light exposure for your canvases. You were controlling my space because you were anxious about the hearing." Roman paused, then nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry. This is going to be a process." "I know." Nia wiggled her toes, making him smile. "But you're trying. That matters. Do you think the court should grant Isabel custody, Or should Roman and Naya be allowed to raise the baby together despite their complicated history? The custody hearing took place on a cold morning in early spring. Naya was 35 weeks pregnant, uncomfortable and exhausted. Roman sat beside her at the defendant's table, close enough that she could feel the tension radiating from him. Isabel's lawyers went first, painting a picture of Roman as a dangerous obsessive who'd stalked and manipulated a vulnerable young woman. They showed the surveillance photos, read excerpts from the contract, played clips from the press conference where Roman admitted to everything. "This is a man who surveilled an 18-year-old girl for years," the lawyer argued, "who used his wealth and power to trap her in a pregnancy designed solely to fulfill his own needs. His own admissions show a pattern of controlling, obsessive behavior, and Miss Carter, a young woman with a history of abandonment and instability, has been psychologically compromised by months of isolation and manipulation. Neither of them is fit to parent this child." Then it was their turn. Roman's attorney was a sharp woman named Catherine Chen, who'd built her career on impossible cases. She stood up and immediately went on the attack. "Mrs. Calder would have you believe this is about protecting a child. It's not. It's about a woman scorned, trying to use the legal system to reclaim her ex-husband. Mrs. Calder has no biological relationship to this baby. She has no legal relationship to Mr. Calder anymore. Their divorce will be finalized next month. What she has is jealousy and a grudge." Isabel's lawyer objected. The judge, a tired-looking woman in her 60s, waved them both to silence. "I want to hear from Miss Carter," the judge said. "Young lady, you're the one carrying this baby. What do you want?" Nia stood awkwardly, one hand on her belly. Every eye in the courtroom was on her. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. "I want to keep my baby," she said, and her voice came out stronger than she felt. "And I want Roman to be involved as the father. I know our situation is unconventional. I know it started in a way that was wrong. But people are more than their worst mistakes. And Roman is trying to be better. He stalked you for 5 years, the judge said bluntly. He trapped you in a contract designed to control every aspect of your pregnancy. That doesn't concern you? It terrifies me, Nia admitted. I spent weeks angry about it. I left. I came back. I've thought about nothing else for months. And here's what I realized. Roman did something wrong, but he did it because he spent his whole life thinking control equals safety. He doesn't know how to need people without trying to possess them. But he's learning. He's in therapy. He's given me real freedom. He's trying. That's Stockholm Syndrome talking, Isabel's lawyer interjected. She's been isolated and manipulated into defending her abuser. I'm not isolated. Nia turned on her. I have friends. I have a phone. I can leave whenever I want. I'm here because I choose to be. And you don't get to tell me that my choices aren't real just because they're complicated. The judge held up a hand. Mr. Calder, do you have anything to say? Roman stood slowly. Yes, Your Honor. Everything Miss Carter said is true. I'm damaged, controlling, and I've made terrible choices in how I pursued this. But I love that baby already. I love Nia. I'm not going to claim I'm reformed or fixed, because that's not how this works. I'm just trying. If you give me a chance to be this child's father, I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of it. The courtroom was silent. The judge looked between them, to Isabel sitting rigid with fury, then back to the papers in front of her. I'm denying Mrs. Calder's petition, she said finally. She has no legal standing as a non-biological parent. However, I'm also ordering supervised visitation for Mr. Calder for the first 6 months of the baby's life. I want a family psychologist involved, regular check-ins, proof that you're both capable of putting this child first. Miss Carter, you'll have primary custody. Mr. Calder, you'll have visitation rights contingent on continued therapy and psychological evaluation. We'll revisit this in 6 months. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Outside the courthouse, Reporters swarmed them. Roman security held them back while Naya and Roman made it to the car. Once inside, the tinted windows blocking out the chaos, Naya let herself breathe. "We won," she said. "We survived," Roman corrected. "There's a difference." He was right. They hadn't won anything except the chance to keep trying. 6 months of supervised visits, psychological evaluations, the court watching their every move. But they'd have their baby. "Thank you," Roman said quietly, "for not giving up on me." Naya leaned her head on his shoulder, exhausted. "Don't make me regret it." 4 days later, at 36 weeks, Nia went into labor. It started as a backache during breakfast. By noon, the contractions were regular. By 3, Roman was driving them to the hospital, while Naya breathed through pain that felt like her body was splitting apart. "You're doing great," Roman said, one hand gripping hers while the other gripped the steering wheel. He looked terrified. "I'm really not," Naya gasped. "This was a terrible idea. All of it. The contract, the baby, you. Terrible." Noted. "Tell me again, when you're not in labor." The delivery room was bright and cold. Naya had refused an epidural, some stubborn part of her wanting to feel everything. 3 hours of pushing, of pain so intense she forgot her own name, of Roman beside her, the entire time, looking like he wanted to fight the pain itself. And then, a cry. Sharp and outraged and absolutely perfect. "It's a boy," the doctor said, placing a tiny, screaming, blood-covered miracle on Naya's chest. Nia looked down at her son, his eyes squeezed shut, his fists waving, and felt something fundamental shift in her universe. This was real. This person, half her, half Roman, entirely his own. Everything that had come before, the manipulation and control and complicated feelings, suddenly seemed distant compared to the weight of this tiny body against her heart. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, I'm your mom." Roman was crying. Actually crying, tears streaming down his face as he touched the baby's impossibly small hand. "He's perfect." "He's ours," Naya said. They named him Elian, a name that meant light. It felt right. The first 6 months were chaos. Sleepless nights and endless diapers and Elian's lungs proving to be incredibly powerful for someone so small. The court-appointed psychologist came weekly, observing Roman with the baby, interviewing both of them. Nia could see Roman fighting his controlling instincts, wanting to optimize everything, instead forcing himself to just be present. They didn't get married. Nia refused, and Roman understood why. Marriage meant legal binding, and Nia needed to know she was staying by choice, not contract. They lived together in the penthouse, which had somehow transformed from a cold museum into an actual home. There were toys scattered on the expensive rug, Naya's paintings on the walls, a 3-am-bottle warming station in the kitchen. Roman continued therapy. Nia started therapy too, working through her own issues with abandonment and why she'd been drawn to someone so controlling in the first place. It was messy and hard, and sometimes they fought, usually about Roman trying to micromanage Elian's schedule or Naya shutting down when things got too intense. But they were trying. 6 months after Elian's birth, they returned to court. The judge reviewed the psychologist's reports, interviewed them both again, and finally nodded. "Full joint custody granted," she said. "Mr. Calder, I'm impressed with your progress. Miss Carter, you've shown remarkable strength. This is still unconventional, but it's working. Don't make me regret this decision." They wouldn't, or they'd try not to. A year after Elian's birth, Naya had her first gallery showing. Small space in Brooklyn, nothing fancy, but her paintings lined the walls and people actually came to see them. Roman attended, Elian strapped to his chest in a carrier, looking absurdly domestic for a former tech billionaire. "I'm proud of you," Roman said, studying a painting Naya had done while pregnant. It was called "The Cage I Chose," all sharp lines and soft colors, confinement and freedom existing simultaneously. "Are you happy?" Naya asked. They stood by the windows, watching the city below. Elian had fallen asleep against Roman's chest, tiny fist curled in his father's shirt. Roman considered the question seriously. "I'm not sure I know how to be happy in a normal way. But this, you, Elian, it's the closest I've come." "That's pretty morally grey of you," Nia teased. "I'm a morally grey person loving morally complex people. It's the best I can do." Roman shifted. So Elian was cradled more securely. "Are you happy?" Nia thought about the question. A year ago she'd been broke and desperate. Now she was tied to a man who'd stalked her, manipulated her, built a cage around her. She should be miserable. Instead, she was standing in her own gallery show, watching her son sleep, planning a future that felt real for the first time in her life. "Yeah," she said. "I think I am." It wasn't a fairy tale. Roman was still working on his control issues. Nia still had moments of panic where she felt trapped. They fought about parenting styles and boundaries, and whether Roman's helpful suggestions about her art career were supportive or manipulative. But Elian was thriving. A happy, loud, demanding little person who had both his parents actively involved in his life. And Nia and Roman were, against all odds, building something that felt like love. 2 years after Elian's birth, Roman proposed. Not with a ring or a grand gesture, just a quiet question over breakfast while their son threw cereal at the wall. "Marry me," he said, "not because of contracts or custody or anything legal, because I want to choose you every day for the rest of my life, and I want you to choose me back." Nia looked at him, this impossible man who'd entered her life like a corporate acquisition and somehow become her family. "Ask me again in a year," she said. Roman smiled. "Okay." She made him wait 3 years. And when she finally said yes, it was because she'd learned the difference between being possessed and being loved. Because Roman had learned the difference between controlling someone and trusting them. Because their son was 5 years old and asking why his parents weren't married like other kids' parents. Because sometimes the most complicated love stories are the ones worth keeping. The wedding was small. Just family, which for them meant Elian, Nia's few close friends, Roman's sister and nephew Leo, the boy Nia had saved a lifetime ago. No press, no spectacle, just 2 people who'd started in the worst possible way and somehow found their way to something real. During the vows, Roman promised to keep trying, to keep choosing trust over control, to love Nia without trying to own her. Nia promised to keep choosing him, to stay, even when it was hard, to build a life that was complicated and messy and theirs. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. That night, back in the penthouse that had been a cage and become a home, Nia stood by the windows with Roman behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist. 70 floors below, the city glittered with indifference. Above them, Elian slept peacefully, dreaming 5-year-old dreams. "Do you ever regret it?" Roman asked quietly. "The way we started?" Nia thought about the surveillance photos, the contract, the months of control and manipulation. She thought about who she'd been before, invisible and struggling, and who she'd become after, seen and complicated and real. "I regret parts of it," she said honestly. "I wish you'd approached me differently. I wish I'd had more choices. But I don't regret Elian. And I don't regret you, even though I'm still morally grey. Especially because you're morally grey." Nia turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd obsessed over her, controlled her, and somehow learned to love her. "You're not perfect, Roman, but you're trying. That's all anyone can do." He kissed her then, soft and real, the kind of kiss that had taken years to earn. In the morning, they'd wake up to Elian jumping on the bed, demanding pancakes and cartoons. Roman would try to implement a healthy breakfast schedule, and Nia would veto it. They'd argue about whose turn it was to take Elian to school, compromise, go together. Their life would be complicated and imperfect, and sometimes difficult. Roman would struggle with his need for control. Nia would struggle with her fear of being trapped. They'd fight and make up and keep choosing each other. Because some love stories don't start with meet-cutes and happy accidents. Some start with mistakes and manipulation, and two broken people colliding in the worst possible way. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and willing to do the work, those stories end with something real anyway. Not perfect, not simple, but theirs. The end. If you could rewrite their story from the beginning, would you change how they met, or do you think the complicated start made their relationship stronger in the end? Drop your hottest take in the comments. If this story kept you hooked, hit that like button and subscribe for more morally complicated romance stories. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in my next story. Lots of love.